We are out in the vegetable garden and specifically on the tomato garden today because it's all about staking my tomato plants. Now, I plant all heirloom varieties and they're all indeterminate. So that means they get large, 5 foot, 6 foot plus, and leggy and long, and they need really good support because out here, you see all the elements is what I get. I get extreme wind and storms. I get hot, dry wind in the summer. What I really need is to make sure that they're gonna be supported and able to take that. So what I started with was these U-posts. So U-posts are actually driven into the raised beds here. Now every year, I should say, I put my tomatoes in a different bed. I have 4 big garden beds and they get transferred every year to a different one because tomatoes are very susceptible to soil-borne disease. And that means blights and disease live in the soil. They can splash up on the tomatoes and then that can start off on a not so good year. So what I start by doing is putting them in a different bed every year and they're not in the same spot for 4 years. Then I go through and they get to the stage of wanting to get kind of tall and lay over a little bit. And I go through and want to start staking them. Now, what I first do is look at it and I like to get any leaf that is going to touch the soil off. So I'm going to take those little bottom ones just right off. You can use the nippers, you can just pinch them off. Also, what I like to do is these suckers. So if you look here, we have a leaf stem and we have the main stem right here. This is a sucker. And what it will do as the plant gets larger, it really taxes the plant and starts taking energy away from the main plant into this side shoot. And it will get them every time there is a little leaf. So I take them off. So you can see up here, look up here even, there's a little one. And if you take these off, what it does is it trains the tomato to keep putting energy upwards and out into its fruit production as opposed to all these side shoots. So now what I'm gonna do, since I have my post in, I'm gonna take my tomato cage. Now these large tomato cages, I always get tons of questions. Where do you get them? Guys, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think they're made anymore, this large one. But you can get plenty of good tomato cages really anywhere. And you can find them, you know, and what they do is they support the tomato itself. So not only do I have the added support of a U-post, but this cage is gonna actually sit and it's going to make sure that this tomato has plenty of support. Now, while I'm doing this, I wanna make sure I get down and put this tomato plant inside of the cage. So as I drive this down, it doesn't get too caught up in it. So I'm gonna push this in and then we'll move on. So I use a zip tie and that's what I put my U-post and my tomato cage together with. That's just gonna make sure that the cage is actually adhered to the post and it just makes sure it's good and secure. But now my tomato plant, I use little eco twists. So you wanna do something that isn't pure metal because metal will break into your plant and really cause a weak point and possibly break. So I use ones that are plastic lined or something that is eco-friendly. You know what's really good to use actually to tie anything up in the garden? Hosiery. Yeah, women's hosiery for the leg, but that nylon is really soft on plants. So I'll go to secondhand stores sometimes and just buy it. Probably get looked at a little odd, but I think it's great to use in the garden. But what I do, anytime I tie them up, I leave lots of wiggle room because you want them to be able to move in the breeze, because if you make it too tight, it's a weak point where it could just break. So what I'm doing is making a little twist here, and you can see this can still move, but it keeps it close to now one of the poles, which every so often as it keeps growing, I'll make sure it's sturdy on. So now what I have to do is, guess what? I have all these others to go ahead and stake. Some of them are getting long, and so it's a great time to actually go through and stake them. So I'm gonna go through and put these on, and then we'll talk about mulching, because that's important too. Once I have them staked, I put down some type of mulch. So I sometimes use a dry, barky compost, anything that really is just gonna give a little bit of a surface area between the soil and the plant. Because again, soil-borne diseases are coming from when, through rain, whatever it is, watering, that soil washes up on the plant. So if I can make a barrier, and what this is great about too is obviously it will retain some moisture, suppress any type of weeds you could have, whether it's a raised bed like this or in ground, but you can see it's a dry mixture. You could use a bark mulch too. It just depends what's gonna work for you. Bark mulch to me isn't the best because it doesn't work into the soil year after year, so you may have to remove it before you plant the next year. I like to find something that will actually just compost into the soil, so a nice compost like this is gonna work well. Now, some questions I always will get is, do the tomatoes need to be nipped off like they're suckers? Because that's a question I get a lot. On indeterminate tomatoes, I know people that don't nip them off, and growing up, we oftentimes didn't do that. But what you end up getting is a lot of bushy, large tomato plant, and it's really hard for the light and air to circulate within that plant, and it's really hard for all that fruit to ripen. So when you nip those off, you create a little bit more open plant, one that the light can get to and actually ripen all of those tomatoes that are gonna grow. So when you control it a little bit and nip those back, you actually get more fruit production in the end, and that's one of the big reasons. Same with mulching. Do you have to do it? No, I'm not gonna come and force you to do it. You can do what you wanna do. What I have found works really well is when I put this mulch layer down, I don't get the soil splashing up onto the plant, and I actually am able to help hold off blight till maybe late in the season, if at all. That really helps. It also does help just retain some moisture, and it adds some good just things back to the soil too, which is really important. So it helps the soil, retains moisture, suppresses weeds, and helps those diseases not get on the tomato plant as quick. So for me, it's really nice. And I just do a nice, maybe 1 to 2 inch layer. It doesn't have to be super heavy because this isn't like on our flower beds. This is more just to help it, kind of along a little bit. And I do make sure to get it down around the plant. Now, on some of these tomato plants, you can see they're gonna be smaller. All these were ones I started from seed. So some of them were we had a late spring this year. It got really hot, but not until really late. We were really cold, so I couldn't plant these out as early. But tomatoes always seem to catch up with the hot summer we're gonna get. So I'm gonna finish spreading this out, but I hope this helps you realize that just a few steps on tomato care can make a big difference. If you're growing your tomato in a container, same thing. You wanna stake it. You want something solid. That's why you want a nice big container that can then hold up to some good staking. All these things will make your tomato happier, healthier, and easier to pick and better fruit production. That's the point. Share these videos around because yes, it helps me, but guess what? It helps everyone else realize if this guy in Iowa can garden, anybody can garden, I promise you that. Check my website, wyseguide.com, for tips, for tricks, and for recipes on using those tomatoes. I'm gonna finish up here and then we'll go find something else to do.